Good. Thank you.
Okay, we're recording now.
Welcome everyone to the governance meeting. This is the 25th of November, 2020, starting at 8 a.m. That will be items number 1 and 2 on our agenda today. Welcome and call to order and the open of the general meeting. Can I get an acceptance of today's agenda?
I can do that.
Okay. I'll second that.
Excellent. Carried. Any additions or changes or anything like that? Perfect.
I don't think so.
I think, I guess I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but did want to add in something for new business, just talking about whether we'll have a meeting in December or not, and what we might discuss there. So moving on then, any conflicts in today's agenda? Very good. Can I get an approval of the October 28th meeting minutes?
I'll move that. I was at the meeting, so.
Perfect. Thank you. I will second because I was there as well. That's great. And moving right along, we've got the new committee member application. Did anyone get a chance to read through that application?
Yeah, I did.
I read it like 20 minutes ago.
It looks good. Interesting background. A psychology background, a small business background, design background. Quite an interesting mixture. So.
Yeah, definitely. I thought there's definitely could be a lot of value there into one of our committees.
Brings the small business experience and seems to bring an interest and passion for being able to help out in the downtown. Like in the person's answers for each of the application questions, she expressed quite clearly why she wanted to join and how she felt it was important to be a part of Oshawa's future and stuff. So I thought that was a really well done reply. The one thing that surprised me was that in the resume side, resume was nice and sharp, but that she had included a photo at the very top of her resume. Yeah, which isn't sort of the thing to do, really. Like when we work with clients in our employment program, we always say you don't put your picture in there. I mean, you put your contact information, but you really shouldn't put your picture in there. Let people evaluate based on your skills and stuff in your resume, but not on your image, unless you're like an actor, and it's because then you have to, for actors, you're supposed to put your picture in and stuff like that.
You need a headshot, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes it stand out. It's definitely a different format on the resume from what I would be used to seeing. There's that nice big header up there. So yeah. I think it would help you stand out if you're putting in an application in a pile of hundreds of jobs and everything looked the same. You got one that kind of pops out. But yeah, that was an interesting point on that. So
can I give some background on this as well?
Sure.
So probably about 3 or 4 years ago, this individual actually brought an event idea to us, and we were working on it with her. But because of where they wanted the location and some other things, the event never did happen. But very enthusiastic, very willing to, work with the PIA. Not understanding a whole lot of the city processes and stuff, which is normal if it's the first time you're trying to do an event. But my personal interactions with her, I think that she'd mesh well with any number of the committees.
Very good. Well, yeah, I think probably it's the marketing and events that would be fighting over her. The question would be, should we send that application off now and then just kind of let them decide if they want to proceed with that, reviewing that at this time, or are we going to wait until? So
there are no other committee meetings scheduled at this point for December, other than the finance meeting. Most of the committees don't meet in December.
Right.
And this individual was made aware that it would take a couple of months for the process as well.
Okay, well, that's good. So I guess in January for the next It's marketing and events. I'm guessing that she wants to be on. Is that listed
Yeah,
on?
and they meet before you guys, right? So I'm just trying to think. They're going to meet within the first 2 weeks of January.
Yeah. Well, send her off. Send her application off to the other committees and put that on their agenda and let them decide what they want to do. And I guess it'll be up to her if the multiple committees offer her a role of what she wants to do.
The
So
one question, like in her application, she actually didn't check governance as a committee she was looking to join. But does it still come to every committee anyway? Is that the normal process?
No. We vet the applications first, and then
Governance always vets every application?
Yeah, that way we
Okay.
get a chance to actually see a volunteer application in there.
Okay.
But no, we vet everything just to bring up any potential concerns that there might be as far as um, suitability for the role or issues that may arise. So we do a quick vet first, and then once
Okay.
we approve, we send off to the relevant committees and let them make the decision.
do we need a motion
One
to?
suggestion on the application is that the last question needs a little tweak for the language for an update. The question is, I have not been convicted of a criminal offense for which a pardon has not been granted. It's not called pardons anymore. It just revising the word pardon to record suspension.
Good update.
Yeah.
I don't practice in the criminal sphere, so I was not aware of that.
Yeah. Pardons were, well, the terminology referring to the word of pardon was changed back in Harper days, about 8 years ago, when they felt the word pardon sounded too accepting of person's apologies for their wrongdoings. They felt, I forget the terminology, but Vic Toes at the time said something along the lines of, he was the minister at the time, said Canada's not a place of easy apologies or something like that. I forget what his exact terminology. It was really counter to what Canada actually is, but and unfortunately, so they revised it.
I know.
Yeah. So it became record suspensions. They jacked the price from $50 for an applicant to $651 for an applicant when they were submitting the record suspension application to the Parole Board of Canada.
Yeah, I know people who have gone through that process, and it's cost them upwards of $3,000 to get that done, and it takes a very long time, and it's it's really
Depending on where they go. Yeah,
it's a problem. But okay, well, let's do this in 2 separate motions then. How about that? So the wording also remind me of in real estate when you're signing somebody up, you have to give them you have to get a sworn statement saying, "I'm not a non-resident of Canada."
Yeah.
Like, I've not been convicted of a crime for which I've not been pardoned.
Yeah.
Yes. So
double negatives.
Yeah, exactly. So let's. Can I get a motion to approve the application and send to the committees for which the applicant has selected interest?
Do that.
I'll second that.
Excellent. And then can we get a motion to amend the language on the volunteer application form to change the wording from pardon to record suspension?
It's not volunteer application form, it's the committee application form.
Committee application form. Thank you for the correction. Motion to approve as amended.
I'll move that.
Second.
Perfect. All right, chugging right along here. We have the ED evaluation, staff holiday, overtime requests. I think that is something we can take a look at today, as it we don't, even if we are disbanded in January or February, there's still a couple months in between then and now that would be good to have these things in effect or to get moving along on them. So have you guys had a chance to look at those different forms?
Actually, I just looked at the volunteer one because that was number 7 on the agenda, but I didn't see, like, we got the other ones, but they weren't listed as well. I do have them, just that I didn't look at them for today because it wasn't on the agenda for today's.
Was it on yours? Oh, okay. I'm looking at a different agenda than I guess. Mine says number 7 is ED evaluation staff holiday overtime.
Oh,
Am I looking at the wrong one, Angela?
You are. You're looking at an older one.
That's typical me.
So the next item is volunteer policy.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
sorry.
So item number 7, the volunteer policy. Angela's went through and made some updates to that. I think I'm reluctant to move forward on these types of things right now, but since it's already done and it's not something that needs much work, it's been heavily revised to cut down a lot of the duplication. So thank you for that, Angela. What are you guys' thoughts on that? About first off, just discussing that today or looking at it later on, and
Yeah, I think it's okay to look at that one today, and regardless of what's coming, if we then at least sort of make any further changes here, things are in place if things continue or if they don't. So I don't think it hurts to do a little work on it.
very good. So did you have a chance to look through the revised version?
Yeah, if I'm looking at, and I hope I got the right one, is the revised version the 18-page one that we got with the other documents, Angela?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've got 19 pages. Am I looking at the wrong one again?
Oh, sorry, no, well, glossary is listed as page number 18. It might be 19 pages long.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
Sorry.
I go by the PDF page count.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So I think, like I said, it's been condensed. There's a lot of there was a lot of cleanup on there. I think you probably be the expert, Paul, because you've had a chance to look at some volunteer policies before. So I will name you as our resident expert. I don't know, Katie, if you've had a chance to review a thorough volunteer policy such as this before. I certainly haven't, but
Is it possible to please have someone forward me that? Because I also have the wrong one.
Oh,
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Thank you. Appreciated.
problem.
so as I looked at it again, and I know you made lots of edits there to condense and clear some stuff up. I couldn't help but think that even now that I look at it this way, that does this policy have embedded in it policies that you already have elsewhere in the BIA's governance? Because it speaks to a dress code policy, a confidentiality policy, feedback evaluation, and a workplace harassment and violence policy, which to me sound like they'd be policies. So like the workplace violence, the confidentiality, and the dress code all seem to me like they would be like applicable to anybody, not just the volunteer, but they'd be agency organization-wide policies. So places that I've worked or volunteered at, or my own workplace, those are policies that are just that any volunteer, any student, any staff has to read and kind of sign off on anyway. And then the volunteer policy is specific about a volunteer only, like that's stuff that's just about that volunteer, like the evaluation and stuff like that. Does that make sense?
It does, but our volunteer policy, because we have different volunteer roles, and we want to encompass it for everyone, it's very general for the dress code, right? And, most of our events are outdoors. So depending on the weather, that's going to change what the dress code is. And then again, the wine festival, it's probably the only one that really has a more specific sort of dress code, right? So we want to put that in there because it's going to be different. Well, I guess it's not really much different from the office, because there's lots of times where we wear jeans and stuff because we're moving stuff around, right?
Yeah.
Or we never know if we're going out and helping a member or talking to a member, and all of a sudden, they need help with something and we're helping them move things. And each volunteer has to sign a confidentiality form at the beginning of their shifts. And oddly enough, we still have incidences with volunteers for harassment and stuff. And it's in there to make the volunteers aware of it. And I think the language
I'm not saying that it wouldn't be in there. I'm just saying that it would be a policy that, so for example, workplace violence and harassment, anybody for the organization, whether it was a student, staff, or volunteer, would have to be aware or sign off on it anyway. It's just that in other places, I've never seen it made within an existing policy of another policy. You know what I mean? Like it's for the whole organization, not like there's not like there's a copy for staff and then there's a copy for the volunteers and then there's a copy for students and then there's a copy. You know what I mean?
Well, we do have in policies and procedures.
Yeah.
But it's in there for the volunteers because there's volunteers where the language in maybe our normal one wouldn't be as easy for them to understand, right?
Okay.
So the language is a bit more simplified. And it just is, and when we hand them the manual, then they know for sure that there are those things, right? And I think that's kind of the point of keeping them in there is, yes, we might have confidentiality form that we get each volunteer to sign at the beginning of each event. But if I've just got someone who's asking about stuff, I want them to be aware that, there are these specific policies and that, they're expected to abide by them. Because, like when we get people from the Justice Department to come and volunteer, sometimes those people don't want to follow the rules, right? Where if I can hand that to them and say, this is what's expected, then they know right away. There's no second guessing and they can't come back and say, well, you never told me.
I think that goes back to a bigger, where like you guys are pretty much saying the same thing, that these, the harassment policy is important. I guess the question would be, would that be when a volunteer signs up that they get the volunteer policies and procedures as well as the harassment procedures?
No, see, they wouldn't
matter who they are. They'd be doing this. They'd be under the same expectations, right?
And the package they receive, we're just talking about the package they would receive. So if we're going to give somebody the volunteer policies and procedures, we're also going to give them the harassment policy as a separate document.
We don't, right? We don't give them the harassment policy and the other policies separately.
Do we give them the volunteer policy?
We would give them the volunteer policy, which would talk about that in there, right? But we don't have, a separate form or policy that we would hand out for the harassment, right?
And that's what he would be saying, is that would be the difference. If we took that out of the volunteer policy and procedure, then we would be giving them the copy of the separate harassment policy, and it would be the same document globally. Yeah. So I think this is something that we could, and again, part of the reason I'm hesitant to move forward with this is because policies and procedures and all of that stuff is under scrutiny by the City Hall, and we're going to be working with them to overhaul all of the different policies and procedures we have. So why don't we make a note, Angela, that when that review occurs, provided our organization continues, that this be something that we raise as, having a separate harassment policy in our volunteer policies and procedures. Does that line up with what city best practices is versus having a global harassment policy that applies and encompasses everyone in the organization? And whether that means making a change to our harassment policy, so there's a volunteer section in there that encompasses the language if you're concerned that it needs to be more simplified and straightforward. I would say I would want our harassment policy to be clear and straightforward language, regardless of if it's volunteer or internal staff. So I think those just might be questions that we can lean on the city for and get some guidance from them on that issue. So, but I think, we're talking about the same thing. It's just, do we need to have a separate one included in the volunteer policies and procedures, or do we have a global one? And then if we have the global one, then that does need to be handed out and provided to the volunteers together with our volunteer policy and procedure as a separate document. I think we land in the same place. It's just how that looks, what that looks like. And I would say that we might defer to the expertise of the city staff when helping with our policies and procedures to take a look at that.
And it may help simplify some things a little bit. Instead of having to manage two versions, you'd have one to manage for a number of these things that and reduces the volume of policies you got to keep looking back at or editing stuff down the road.
Yeah, I definitely I see that. Like that seems important to me as well. I mean, we call it the workplace violence and harassment policy. If it's volunteer violence and harassment policy, then yeah, having two of those, I'm not sure. So I think we defer to the city about that and get their input and take it from there.
Yeah.
Are we
Okay.
doing any events where we need volunteers between now and?
Well, yeah, I have volunteers showing up today, but that's okay. So, and he's a long-term volunteer. I'm not worried about that. I just want to confirm, though, it was the workplace harassment, confidentiality, and what was the third one, Paul? Was it accessibility?
No, complaints process, I think, too, was a policy that I think would probably be overarching for the organization as a whole. Like what is that procedure? Should
Okay.
be the same for probably anybody who would have a concern. But who would complain about Angela? Nobody would complain about Angela.
No, but I've had volunteers complain about other volunteers.
Okay, yeah.
Right. And I've had volunteers harass other volunteers, and I've had public harass volunteers. So, you know, we were just trying to cover all the bases when we were creating this.
Yep.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that I had those three things noted.
Yeah, I think it's a valid.
Oh, I know what it was. Dress code was the other one.
Oh, dress code, yeah.
Other than that, it looked really good. I mean, the evaluation sheets that you've got there are pretty cool for letting them provide some sort of feedback, grading stuff, and makes it easy for them to do, quick and easy. Ask them about participating again in future events and stuff like that. I think it's a good way to sort of always be able to follow up with that volunteer. And then having the evaluation of the volunteer piece was really good too for, again, a simple and quick way to be able to, not that you're like keeping track of, like you're not like creating a permanent record like a high school or elementary school thing, but you've got a reference piece to go back and say, well, this person's going to volunteer again. Their evaluation showed that they were really good at being able to supervise or manage a couple of other volunteers around them. So let's put them in that role again the next time. Kind of thing. So I think that's a really helpful tool for you guys to have.
Yeah. I think too, one of the things I'm looking at would be just the ordering of how we do things. So once we get the feedback from the city, if we are going to have a separate harassment policy, I think we would want to order the document to put some of the things that we would maybe say are the most pressing or most concerning towards the front, and then maybe some of the more other things towards the back. So if we were going to have separate workplace violence and harassment policy, and that was something that we want to make sure that they're brought right to their forward of their attention, then I think we might want to put that higher up on the things. They don't have to, they know it's there because it'll be the first thing that they look at. But yeah, we can discuss that at a later date. What do you think, Katie?
I think you make sense, and it sounds good to me.
I like it when I make sense. Hopefully I can keep that up for the rest of the day. Usually trails off before lunch and then again around 3.
Yeah, it happens.
Right. Well, I'm not sure. I guess the only motion we would have for that would be, maybe Angela, I'd ask you, what do we give to volunteers right now? Do we have any documents that we hand out to them when they first sign up to be a volunteer? Is this something that we would be looking at giving them every single time? Is it sent by email? Do we print it out? What's that look like on the ground when you have volunteers come in right now for this
Right
policy?
now, if I have volunteers that are interested, we have an old volunteer policy or manual, we called it, and it's on the website. I will email it to them. And usually what happens with that more so is the parents who are helping some of their high school students organize some volunteer positions. And so it's more of a comfort for the parents to see the manual so that they can see what's sort of expected, the different types of roles. But then there's also an application form, and then they email that back. So it's not nearly as extensive as what this is, right? It just basically outlines who we are, what the roles are, and that, you know, we're doing this, you know, most of our events are free and it's basically community based.
I had one other thought.
No,
Try not
no.
to add your workload. So on the application itself, you then have them signing off at the bottom, or parent guardian if they were under 17 or under, right?
Yeah.
And you got the statement of, I'm 18 years old, 18 years or older, and have reviewed and agreed to all the terms and contents of this application and waiver. Should the language say more like, I've reviewed and agreed to all the terms in the volunteer guide, or something like, so that it makes a reference to the whole document that they are expected to have read and reviewed?
Yeah, I don't think it should say waiver.
Yeah. Because this is what they're going to see, like they're going to go through this stuff. So it should be like language that refers to them, and they've read all this stuff, they agree to it and understand that they have to abide by it. And then if it's the parent or guardian, the language, like the sentence might need to be the same. Like,
Yeah.
I've read it, and I agree my child is expected to abide by this policy and guidebook or volunteer guide manual.
I think we may want to do something as well where we give a link on our website. It's easy to find if you know where you're looking, but if you're sending out emails on the day before, or as the event gets closer and somebody's maybe signed off on this a little while earlier, it might be nice to have a link in the emails to just direct them to where they can find the volunteer policy and procedure. And
Yeah, I
again,
would probably just email it directly to them. But I agree, we should figure a way of putting that so that it's a little more noticeable too.
yeah, something where we have that up in front and center, and think it's same with the where we might want to put out the harassment policy or something on the website so that it's nice and clear where somebody can go if they're experiencing that, and what they can look to do, especially if they're not comfortable bringing it directly to you or just mentioning it to you. They can look at that and see. So that would be my note there. I think, yeah, the harassment policy is really important, and I think we should be making it front and center. Yeah, and again, I don't know what it looks like on the ground, but if you're sending out emails and organizing and stuff like that, then I think it might be helpful that there be a tagline at the bottom of your email that just says, for volunteer policies and procedures, including harassment policy, click the following link, and that can just be kind of at the bottom of an email at a generic input, but it's extra work I get. So yeah, that's just a thought. I think that would be nice though to have that there and have it straight up. So with that, I think we can motion to review the volunteer policy and procedures manual as proposed with the City of Oshawa during the assistance period where the City of Oshawa is going to come in and help us out. That's too wordy, but yeah, to review the proposed volunteer and policies and procedures manual with the city for approval and guidance.
Okay, I agree with that. I'll move for that.
Great. All right. Somebody let me know what's next on our agenda, since I'm obviously working on the
New business.
Yeah. New business. So new business, I think something I'd want to bring up is meeting in December. We don't have one scheduled. Is that right, Angela?
That's correct.
And I think we can keep it that way. We'll look over what we have to do and what the climate is like in January, and then we will meet up at that time. But we'll send out a note on that to confirm whether that proposed meeting is going to go forward, depending on what we have on the agenda and what there is to do.
Yeah, and I believe I sent proposed meeting dates for 2021.
Indeed. Thank you very much for that. My calendar has been filled up accordingly. So it's good to have those well in advance so I know, especially booking court dates and stuff like that, that happens months ahead. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes. So my plan is beginning, so it gets next week sometime, for all of the BIA meetings, I'll be sending out calendar invites for each of the committees so that it will be populated into your account, into your calendars.
Sounds good. Any other new business? Perfect. Katie, do you have survey results analyzed for us for the board meetings from the last one?
Let me take a look at what I have and I'll send you an email.
That would be excellent. Thank you. I'm sure it's mostly the same stuff. Stay within the time frame and everything else is okay.
It generally is. Go faster and you're fine.
Yeah. Okay, so no, barring any new business, Angela, is there anything else you wanted to discuss or talk about for maybe things in the future that we would want to deal with here, or what do you
I
got?
think if there is anything, we decided the other thing was finance. So no, I think we're good for now.
Perfect.
Basically, we're waiting for the city, right, to figure out what's happening.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think the idea from the report from them is that they want to work with us on creating some of these internal documents and revising some of our internal documents and procedures and whatnot. So I don't want to go forward with any of that stuff until we have the chance to adhere to their recommendation and work with them on.
Yeah, and some of this, like this specific one, they had actually sent us what their policies were and stuff. So we've sort of incorporated it, of course, modified for ours because what we do is specifically event-based, where they also have the leadership program and stuff. So we tried to incorporate some of their things. So hopefully it'll make things go smoother when we do speak with the city about it.
Yeah, certainly. I think they will be more familiar and able to say, yeah, this is good. This is great stuff. Who wrote this? Oh, this is that. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that is a wrap. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Move. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. I was hearing crickets there. I was like, oh, I guess we can stay on for a little bit longer.
Last meeting today. Yeah.
So I have a request, but I can turn this off because our meeting is technically done, right?
We are technically done.